Don't embarrass me, my husband snapped, and then he slapped me across the face in front of 50 guests. The music stopped, glasses froze mid-air. He laughed like it was a joke. I touched my burning cheek and said nothing, because I knew something he didn't. My name is Danielle Brooks and I'm 34 years old. I work as an operations manager for a mid-sized logistics company. Quiet job, quiet life. I married Thomas when I was 27. He was older, confident, successful, or so I thought. In his world I was the supportive wife, the planner, the fixer, the one who made sure everything ran smoothly. His 50th birthday party, I organized the whole thing. Venue, catering, guest list, every detail. I wasn't flashy. I wasn't loud, I wasn't the woman who demanded attention, but I paid attention to everything. Our marriage had cracks, his temper, his need to control, the way he liked to correct me in public. That night wasn't the first time he humiliated me. It was just the first time he forgot about the cameras. I wasn't rich or glamorous, but I had something he didn't expect: patience and proof. If you've ever stayed quiet while someone underestimated you, hit that subscribe button. Have you ever held back because you knew the truth would come out later? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if you believe quiet strength is still strength, click hype. Let's get into it. The party was in full swing. Co-workers, business partners, friends from his gym filled every corner of that rented ballroom. The chandeliers were bright, the catering was perfect. Every single arrangement had my fingerprints on it: the flower centerpieces, the custom cake, the playlist he never once thanked me for. Thomas was drinking more than usual. I noticed it early. The way his laughter got louder. The way his eyes got sharper and meaner with each glass of whiskey. He started making little digs. Jokes, he called them. Danielle's too sensitive, he told a group near the bar, loud enough for me to hear. She cried at a car commercial last week. People chuckled nervously. I smiled and said nothing. Then he grabbed the microphone from the DJ stand to make a toast. I thought he was going to thank the guests. Instead, he turned it into something else. I want to say a word about my wife, he announced, swaying slightly. Danielle's great at planning parties. Not so great at keeping her opinions to herself. The room laughed, that awkward, uncomfortable kind of laughter people use when they don't know what else to do. I walked toward him quietly. I whispered, "Let's just enjoy the night, okay?" He turned to me and said, loud enough for the front tables to hear, "Don't tell me what to do." I reached for the microphone, gently, carefully, the way you take scissors from a child. He slapped me, open hand, hard, across my left cheek. Sound cut through the music. Someone gasped. A glass shattered somewhere near the back. The room went absolutely still. Thomas blinked, then smiled at the crowd. "Relax," he said into the mic. "She knows I'm kidding." No one laughed this time. I stood there for exactly 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds I looked up and saw 2 security cameras mounted on the wall behind the stage, both angled directly at us. I felt the heat rising in my cheek. I felt 50 pairs of eyes watching me. And I felt something else, a calm so deep it almost scared me. I stepped off the stage without a word. Thomas's sister appeared out of nowhere, blocking my path near the hallway. She grabbed my arm and whispered, "Don't ruin his night, just let it go." I looked at her. I didn't argue. I pulled out my phone and sent a single text to the venue manager, a man named Greg, who I had personally hired and briefed 3 weeks earlier. The text said 2 words: "It's time." Thomas stood at that microphone, smiling, refilling his glass. He thought he'd won. The guests thought the incident was over. But Greg was already in the back office, pulling up the security system and saving every frame of footage from the last 2 hours. Thomas didn't know that. He didn't know any of it. The next morning, Thomas sat across from me at the kitchen table with the posture of a man who believed he had nothing to answer for. The smell of coffee filled the room, bitter and sharp, same as his words. "You embarrassed me," he said, not an apology, an accusation. "Walking off like that in front of everyone, do you know how that looked?" I stared at my cup. "You made a scene," he continued. "The slap was nothing, you're turning it into something." I said nothing. He took that silence as agreement. Then his mother called. I could hear her through the phone from across the table. "Thomas gets overwhelmed under pressure," she said. "Men his age carry a lot of stress. You need to be understanding, Danielle." I hung up my own call with a friend and just sat with that word, understanding. 2 days later, Thomas posted photos from the party. Bright, happy, carefully cropped images. His arm around laughing friends, the beautiful cake, the flowers, the caption read, "Amazing night, couldn't have done it without my beautiful wife." Comments poured in. "What a celebration, you two are goals, happy birthday, Thomas." Meanwhile, I received a message from someone who had been there that night, a colleague of his named Philip. It said, "Just heard Thomas telling people you overreacted to a little joke, thought you should know." So that was the plan. Reframe the narrative, make me the dramatic one, make it a story about my reaction, not his action. Then came the money. Thomas sat me down one evening with the kind of calm that felt rehearsed. "I want to remind you," he said slowly, "that this house is in my name. The car is leased through my account. Think carefully before you do something stupid, Danielle." He let that sentence hang in the air like a threat dressed in logic, and maybe once it would have worked. But I had already opened a private document on my personal laptop 3 months earlier. I had labeled it simply insurance. Inside that folder were screenshots of texts where he called me worthless, a voicemail where he told me I had no future without him, names and phone numbers of people who had witnessed other moments, records of bank transfers he thought I hadn't noticed. The financial threat made me feel small for about an hour. Then I went back to that folder and added the date of his threat, the exact words he used, and a note about the tone of his voice. He grew more confident with each passing day. My silence to him looked like surrender. It wasn't. What Thomas didn't know was that I had already contacted Greg the morning after the party, not just to thank him, to formally request a copy of the full CCTV footage, not only the moment on stage but the entire hour leading up to it. The footage was sharper than I expected. Clear audio, clear visuals. You could read lips if you needed to. But you didn't need to because the microphone had picked up everything. I watched it once alone in my car parked outside a coffee shop with the volume low. I watched myself smile and stay composed while he made his jokes. I watched myself walk toward him gently. I watched the slap. I watched the room react. And I watched myself walk away with more dignity than that room deserved. I stored 3 copies of that footage in 3 different places. I had been quietly building this file for months before the party even happened. The screenshots, the voicemails. The bank records showing money moved without discussion. Every piece of documentation dated, organized, stored. I wasn't planning revenge, I want to be clear about that. There was no satisfaction in it. I was preparing for survival. I had a plan. And not a single person in Thomas's world had any idea it existed. A week after the party, I reached out to a woman named Carla. We had met briefly at a company event 2 years earlier, and I'd remembered her because she left Thomas's company under circumstances that were never fully explained. I found her through a mutual connection and asked if she'd be willing to meet for coffee. She agreed immediately, like she had been waiting for the call. We sat across from each other at a corner table, and I told her what happened at the party. She didn't look surprised, she looked tired. "He's done this before," she said quietly, "not just to you." Carla had been a department head at Thomas's company for 4 years. She filed an internal complaint after he screamed at her in a staff meeting, threw a folder across the room, and then told HR she had misunderstood the situation. She was let go 3 months later, framed as a performance issue. She fought it. She found a lawyer. And that lawyer, she told me, was still practicing. She slid a business card across the table. I picked it up. There were others, Carla said. At least 2 more employees who said similar things but never moved forward. The pattern is there if someone goes looking. I thanked her. She told me I didn't need to thank her. At home that evening, Thomas was planning a small family dinner for the following weekend. His version of smoothing things over. He told me his mother and sister would be there. He said, "It would be good for you to show your face and behave normally." He fully believed I was going to sit down at that table and apologize. He had no idea what I had scheduled for that same afternoon. I called Thomas on a Thursday and told him I wanted to meet before the family dinner. I said I needed to clear up a misunderstanding. He agreed without hesitation. He drove to the police station thinking I had asked him there to withdraw some kind of formal complaint I'd filed in a panic. He was smirking when he walked through the door. He actually held it open for me with a little mocking bow. We were taken to a small room, fluorescent light, 2 chairs, a table. An officer introduced himself and explained that a formal complaint had been filed regarding an incident of domestic assault. Thomas's smirk flickered but held. Then the officer turned a laptop screen toward us and pressed play. The footage from the party filled that small room. No music, no crowd noise now, just clear, undeniable visuals and audio. Thomas's voice came through the speaker. "Don't tell me what to do." Then the slap, the gasps, the shattering glass, the silence. And then his voice again, smooth and smiling. "Relax, she knows I'm kidding." Thomas stared at the screen. The color drained from his face slowly, the way water drains from a bathtub. He opened his mouth. "It was a joke," he said. The officer looked at him steadily. "Sir, assault isn't a joke." I reached into the folder I'd brought and slid printed screenshots of his texts across the table. Then the voicemail transcript. Then Carla's written statement, signed and dated, outlining prior aggressive behavior and the pattern of intimidation inside his company. Thomas looked at the papers, then he looked at me, not with anger this time, with something I had never seen on his face before. Fear. He leaned slightly toward me and whispered, "You're really doing this? I looked at him and said calmly and clearly, "You did this." The officer explained the charges. He explained the next steps. He explained Thomas's rights and obligations. And in that small, fluorescent-lit room, something shifted completely. The man who had stood at a microphone and laughed while 50 people watched him humiliate his wife was now sitting very still, looking at the table, saying nothing. I wasn't the quiet wife anymore. I was the woman with proof. I filed for divorce within the week. With my lawyer and the documentation I had collected, I secured a settlement that was fair, the house, a portion of the shared accounts, and legal protection going forward. Thomas's company opened an internal review after Carla's statement became part of the official record. Other voices came forward once the door was open. A few people from the party reached out privately to apologize for saying nothing that night. I told them I understood. His family went completely silent. I moved into a small apartment across the city. It has 2 windows and a narrow kitchen and a radiator that clicks at night. It is not big, it is not glamorous. But when I wake up in the morning, the air feels different. There are no footsteps I have to brace myself against, no tone of voice I have to read before I speak. No version of myself I have to perform to keep the peace. For the first time in years, I don't flinch at raised voices. I learned something through all of this, something I want to say clearly. Silence is not weakness. Silence can be strategy. Silence can be preparation. But only if you're building something in the quiet. The moment you stay silent forever, it becomes surrender. I refuse to surrender. If you've ever been hurt in public by someone who was supposed to love you, I want you to know I see you. I know what it feels like to smile when your face is burning. I know what it costs to stay composed when everything in you wants to collapse. Have you ever been told to just let it go to keep someone else comfortable? Share your story in the comments. You deserve to be heard. Subscribe if you believe that patience and proof are forms of power. Click hype to help this story reach someone who needs to hear it tonight. Your story has power. If you felt something watching mine unfold, please subscribe and share your experience in the comments below. Every hype you give this video helps it reach someone else who might be sitting in their own silence right now, building their own folder, waiting for the right moment. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening.